Before our Christmas Eve edition of our Saturday Simulcast, I want to say and provide a heartfelt thanks to all of you that supported Brian Neubert through our GoFundMe campaign. It really wasn't intended to be a campaign. Gunter Haynes put it together, and that took off, and we are grateful, so grateful for the support. It is a Christmas story that I will never forget, and I know that Brian Neubert and his family won't either. It is a bit overwhelming and emotional, but we appreciate it all, and you have made it a very, very special holiday season for all of us at goldenblack.com. So enjoy today's Saturday Simulcast, and thank you so much for your generosity, your love and support for Brian and his family, and for all of us at goldenblack.com. Welcome to our Saturday Simulcast. Got the band together here. Brian Neubert, Mike Carmin, and Tom Dienhart joining me. This could go on for hours, but I promise you it won't. It's only going to go on for about 20 minutes. We're going to have our little Christmas Eve edition of Saturday Simulcast, brought to you by the Union Club Hotel. It's probably cozy and warm there. It is not cozy and warm anywhere else. It's so cold in my house that I've got my Columbus chill hat on here. I'm not marketing anything for the chill, I promise. But there's some hockey fans among this group, so they can relate to good old minor league hockey and would appreciate that. All right, I'm going to start with you, Tom Dienhart. Obviously, you're going to at least be heading to warmer climes here before long. It's actually about 70 or 60 in Orlando today. I think it's going to be warm next week. Just your impressions as you get into that, and as Purdue makes its trip with a roster that none of us would have predicted, I guess, where the Boilermakers are heading into that showdown that will have us on the edge of our seats on January 2nd. Tom, what say you in terms of what's the status of things, at least in your own brain?
Well, first, man, it's great to see Mike Carmin, man. I tell you what,
we finally done it.
You talk about a champion among champions. I'll be sad not to have Mike at my side. He's my leader. He gets me to the post-game interviews. He's the veteran. He's the lead blocker, if you will. But anyway, yeah, who knows? You know, as you guys have read, we've all seen on social media all the opt-outs. I mean, it's going to be an interesting depth chart, if you will, for Purdue come January 2nd. Again, more notable for who's not going to play than who actually is playing. I know Purdue's trying to make the best of it, right? Drew Brees was brought in, I guess part cheerleader, part coach, if you will. And they're trying to make the best of what's been I'm sure, a very trying situation amid all the tumult of the coaching change. And then so many things going on right now with recruiting, just high school kids, the portal. So again, it seems like it's almost become an afterthought. But it's a big bowl game, right? January 2nd. So, Purdue's about a 15-point underdog, I think. And they will have their hands full for sure, taking on, Brian Kelly and Jaden Daniels and that whole LSU roster.
Yeah, no doubt. Carm, you've covered Purdue football for decades. You're not old enough to do that, but we're going to say you have. But look at, and I know you're helping us a lot with basketball now with Brian. We appreciate that. But your perspective of just what might be the mindset of Purdue. I mean, Drew Brees, in my opinion, does bring. They probably want to perform well because Drew's in the house, so to speak. I mean, they've got to help a little bit from a motivation standpoint. Does it make any difference from you? Does this bowl game make any difference in the grand scheme of things for Purdue football?
Well, I've tried to forget about football the last.
I know you have,
but it's hard to do with everything that is going on. It's to me, it's just a sad state of affairs of where we've come.
Yeah.
With these bowl games where players are opting out, and other than the bowls giving them money to play, which probably will happen down the line, does this structure even exist in 5 years? It's a big. Purdue should be celebrating an opportunity to play in a New Year's Day bowl game because it doesn't happen a lot. But they're taking a skeleton crew down there. It doesn't appear that it will end well for them. But, last year Tennessee was supposed to roll over them too, and Purdue had some opt-outs, and they rose to the occasion and got the job done. Drew Brees, adds a storyline to the mix. Gives the network an in-game interview they normally wouldn't have to keep.
Uh oh.
May have lost Carmin. Go ahead, keep going.
But, I mean,
you said we lost you at Drew Brees, but go ahead.
But just I think the guys will play hard because they're going to be looking to put something on tape for the new coach to look at and try to get a job next year. So we'll see how that all plays out. But they're definitely shorthanded, and they're going to have to do a lot of things. And Brian Brom should have Jeff Brom's full list of trick plays to use at his disposal.
Brian, with Mark Hagan being still involved, running out the ground ball, so to speak, till his departure. Brian Brom, we presume, as well. Strange environment, but you always have a different way of looking at things. Is there something else we should be looking at for this one?
First off, I'll take Alf for the block.
Okay.
Is there a different way we should be looking at things?
It is the Christmas season, after all. I
think I'll second what Carm said. It's kind of unfortunate that this is sort of what it came to, but this is sort of the issue with the calendar nowadays and the changing climate of college football, where these bowl games and the timing of them make less and less sense. And until the NFL starts rewarding guys for playing in bowl games, this is college football's problem. This isn't the NFL's problem. This is the bowl game's problem. This isn't the NFL's problem. I'm of the opinion, and I don't have all the answers here. I'm just the guy who comes up with the big idea, and then somebody else can figure it out. But I think that we're reaching a point where I think they need to have a conversation about moving these bowl games to the start of next season. If you just think about the ratings that the TV networks could get out of that, you wouldn't have the captive audience, but you'd have a more interested audience. You'd have a more amped up audience. Obviously, the teams wouldn't be the same as the teams that earn the spot in that bowl game. But I think that would be a hell of a way to start a college football season. And I think you'd have full participation. You wouldn't have these situations where teams are going into their bowl games with half their team in the portal and no coach. The calendar just doesn't make sense for this anymore. It makes sense for the college football playoff because all those guys are going to play. But chances are college football playoff teams aren't going to be between coaches, and they're not going to have, all that much portal damage having been done to them. I don't know how viable that is, but that's just the hot take I came up with last week that I figured I would throw out here. But it's a shame for Purdue because this is a big deal in the grand scheme of things, but in the grander scheme of things, it's sort of collateral damage in the bigger picture of, starting a new coaching era. The far more important thing here is that Purdue is finding out whether or not Purdue's gotten the right guy here and whether or not they can kind of build on success, if not take it to another level here. This bowl game is just kind of lost in the middle of that. And that's too bad because this is a pretty big deal for the program.
Hey, real quick too,
before
we go on, I would like to, since Mike's been out of pocket for obvious reasons, moving on to bigger and better things. I think people would love to know. I know I would love to know. I'll speak for myself. I'm sure a lot of people watching would like to know Mike Carmin's thoughts on just real quick. What you thought Jeff Brom meant to Purdue, and what he thinks of the new hire.
Well, I think obviously the program's in a better place now than it was. I mean, the bar was pretty low when he came, so any success was going to get over that. But when you look at the last 6 years, Purdue's playing in front of near capacity stadiums, full houses at Ross-Ade. They are exciting to watch. There's a lot of things, a lot of drama behind the scenes, and a lot of things that went on that, make this a clean break into a new era. But I don't think I know he was just 2 games above 500, but they're going to go to 4 bowl games in 6 years. It doesn't, it's not what Joe Diller did 10 and 12 years, but it's still pretty good accomplishment in the Big Ten. Now, once things change, when you get in one division in a couple years, it's going to become a little bit harder to do what they did this year. But they won a Big Ten West championship. They've been in that conversation for a while, so it's got to be a successful era. Now, I wouldn't be building statues right now for it, but it'll go down as a pretty good era of Purdue football, I think.
Yeah.
What about Ryan Walters? What do you think?
Well, I haven't been around him. I've just seen what you guys have done, and I was surprised Purdue broke the mold and went defense and went with no experience as a head coach. But it appears he's starting to surround himself with guys that probably fit what Purdue needs to do from an offensive standpoint. And that's throw the ball around and have it centered around the quarterback and trying to get marquee receivers and all that kind of stuff. So I as most people probably have said, just take a wait and see approach, see what happens. If he's the dynamic recruiter that he comes in with, and he's going to fill the roster up, and how does he do in the portal? And there's just so many different things now that he has to work his way through. So we'll see what happens and how it all comes together. But so far he's gotten some pretty good people on staff, and I think Purdue fans probably will like that once we get playing and once we get into the season a little bit. But you still got to have talent to navigate that 2023 schedule that's coming up.
Tom, I got to ask you, because you've been watching the portal and watching these guys come in and out, watch the assistant coaching hires, your impression early on. I mean, it's some good names in there. Some still youth is the winner here in this whole deal. But what have you taken from it?
Yeah, first, the Drew Brees thing about what Mike talked about. I was on a radio show today in Baton Rouge, and they said they're going to have a drinking game for how many times Drew Brees is shown on the sideline during the course.
That'll be perfect.
Forget about the high Bob game. It's
all they need is a reason down there.
They don't even need a reason.
No, they don't.
So, I think, Mike knows this, and Brian. I mean, Purdue's got needs at every position, honestly, right? I mean, there's some that's more urgent than others. I think you guys can correct me, or I'd love your feedback. Defensive backfield, linebackers, and wide receivers may be the most pressing. You could probably use a couple offensive linemen, a tight end. And then there's quarterback, right? Of course, the position that draws all the interest in the eyeballs. What's Purdue going to do at quarterback? Are they going to bring in a portal quarterback? I think we believe they will bring in a portal quarterback. Who that somebody is, no idea. You think maybe they've at least had conversations with a couple guys, Hudson Card and Keaton Slovis. But again, I was looking at a list today of available quarterbacks, and there's still some interesting guys in there. The connection to Keaton Slovis, Brian talked about that. It's obvious. Graham Harrell was his OC at USC, so there's a familiarity there. Hudson Card's an Austin, Texas guy. Drew Brees is an Austin, Texas guy. Maybe they talked, who knows? But anyway, it's going to be fascinating to see. I think maybe we could see something pop in the next week as far as a portal quarterback goes. And I do have to think, though, like Mike said about the offensive staff, Graham Harrell, I'm sure, is going to make a lot of people sit up straight. If you're a quarterback and you're looking for a place to become a dynamic thrower, you're probably going to want to play in his offense. So and I think there was some unease when Ryan Walters was announced as to what this offense was going to look like. And I think the hiring of Harrell has to have eased any fears people had about maybe Purdue straying away from its always quarterback-centric offense. So, yeah, again, there's a lot of work to do, guys. They only signed 12 players Wednesday, 7 guys decommitted. And again, I'd like your input. I mean, how many portal guys do you think they'll bring in? Ron would bring in about 10. Who knows, man, maybe this staff's going to have to bring in 15 guys out of the portal.
Brian, I'll throw that at you because, I mean, obviously, with just looking at that whole situation and covering recruiting and et cetera, it's the wild, wild west. But it's the definition of you got to have roster management at the top of your list of things you can do as a new head coach.
Yeah, I don't want to frame this as a rebuild because Ryan Walters is taking over a successful situation, but nevertheless, new coaches, very often want to, and it's in their best interest to turn over the roster as fast as possible, get as many of their guys in there. Get as many guys they've evaluated and they've gotten to know and fit their, check all of their boxes as possible. And there's it's not like it's not like it's rocket science. A lot of coaches look for the same stuff. So if Jeff Brom's staff look for guys who played with high energy, love football, whatever you want to say, is chances are if they've got those guys, Ryan Walters will be happy to have that sort of characteristic in his football program. But nevertheless, there's going to be systematic concerns or systematic boxes to check. There's going to be personality boxes to check. There's going to be, whatever's going on behind the scenes in the program, whether or not that's a healthy situation or not, to address things like that. So I'd imagine he'll be very aggressive with his scholarships. I'd imagine he'll be very aggressive looking for the specifics he wants in both offensive and defensive players. And I think it's probably one of those situations where you max things out. I mean, an empty scholarship does you no good. And I think nowadays in college football, it's about year-to-year roster management as opposed to roster development. And I think that it's reasonable to expect him to come in and just, if they've got 20 open scholarships, use 22 of them. That's kind of the nature of college football nowadays. So I would anticipate that being the case, but I can't claim to know Ryan Walters well enough to know his approach to this stuff, nor can any of us. So we're all just kind of speculating here.
That's what we do, though, man. We just speculate. That's our full-time job, is speculation.
Got to talk about something.
got to do that. Got to fill time. All right, we'll get to the
hold on.
Oh, go ahead.
I just had one thought. I mean, when Painter joined the program, he took some questionable character guys. Brom probably did the same thing just to fill the roster. I mean, do you foresee something along that line just to fill the roster? He's going to take a gamble on some guys that may not be, choir boys at the beginning, just to kind of fill some spots and get the program up and going.
Yeah, that's always the risky run. Now, how you avoid that nowadays, that's the undercurrent to that whole question too. It's like, if you're recruiting a guy in a week out of the portal, how do you get to know him? How do you find out that he's a choir boy or not a choir boy? That's the really hard part of this nowadays. And that's the occupational hazard for every coach in college sports right now, not just football, but basketball as well. Is, when you built a program through the traditional recruiting cycle and you had a kid on your campus 2 or 3 times, you had him at camp, you got to do in-home visits with him, things like that. You got to be around the guy. You had an established recruiting base where you could know the coaches and you'd have people who shoot you straight. And now it's speed dating. It really is. It's college recruiting Tinder, not to get,
I got that app on my phone. No, I know I don't. Go ahead.
Don't say that out loud.
I know, I won't.
Not to take this in a crude direction, but that's kind of what it is. It's sort of speed dial recruiting. And I think you can kind of see in basketball right now. I think there's a lot of teams in, college basketball, college football are 2 very different sports, but I think there's some teams in college basketball right now that have bad locker rooms. And I think some teams are underachieving relative to expectation because of it, because you bring in these mercenaries that they maybe don't gel quite as well. Somebody finds out that somebody else is getting more NIL money than the other guy, and all of a sudden you have problems. And that opens a door for a team like Purdue that can maybe not have those same problems because they're not playing the game the same way, to just be a little bit more functional than other people. And that's going to be the nature of college sports nowadays. And I think that's probably what you have to be really careful of when you're in Ryan Walters' situation, and not walk in here and bring in the wrong guys. And for it to not be a net gain, but to be a net loss.
Yeah, I think too with Ryan, his biggest thing is going to be, I always said always, I haven't said it for all that long because I've said 2 words to Ryan Walters, but that culture is everything. One of his most important hire, if not his most important hire, will be his chief of staff, whatever that looks like, and who directs him in building that culture. I mean, Tom, I'll go with you. I mean, and kind of dovetail off what Brian said. That is going to be the premium here, is can you get guys in here that are going to buy into what Purdue is about? I understand Purdue's different than it was 20 years ago, but there is a certain way that Purdue does things, and it seems to permeate even through the Brom era to some extent. But how do you view that?
Well, I mean, I have no idea how he's going to build culture. I don't know. He's a young guy. He was billed as having an effervescent or magnetic personality, charismatic. You hear that word a lot. Able to connect with people. One coach had like an ambidextrous personality, which meant he could fit in any room. Old people, young people, didn't matter the demographic. He could blend in and connect. I think we saw that at the Tuesday meeting with the players. From our superficial view, we heard reports that there seemed to be an uplifting feeling having him in the room. And certainly, Mike could speak to this too. Personality wise, seems like a 180 to Jeff Brom in a lot of ways. Jeff could be personable, but I never got the feeling that maybe he had a real connection with players. And it seems like this guy is going to be one of those guys who has that connection. Talked about how every guy's got his cell phone. I'm sure everybody had Jeff Brom's cell phone, but maybe they'll have a willingness to really reach out to this guy if they have a question about something. So just a different vibe and a risk too. He talked on that Indianapolis radio station this week. They asked him about being too young for the job or why he thought he was hired. And he thought his inexperience was a value because he wasn't predisposed to the old way of how college football worked. He talked about how, hey, this is all new to me too. And talking about the portal and NIL in particular. Thought that was a strength. He was not going to have to break any old bad habits or get out of a routine and get up to speed on these new policies and how the sport's working now. So I thought that was an interesting thought. And guys, so far, every assistant coach that's been reported to be hired or has been announced is young too, right?
Yeah.
I don't think there's been a guy over 40 yet that's been hired. Or
he couldn't even be on this Zoom. I mean, it's unreal.
Well, we don't have room. We don't have enough modules.
That's true. No, yeah, we do. They make more boxes.
I could probably be his dad if I'd had a kid when I was in college. So anyway, it's just a different vibe. It's different, right? And like Mike said, there's a risk in every hire. I don't care who you hire. There's a risk. Nobody knows if any hire is going to work out. Yeah. If you're Purdue, why not take a chance? You're definitely zigging when everybody's zagging, right? You got Matt Rule at Nebraska. You got Luke Fickell at Wisconsin. Here you got Ryan Walters, who's never been a head coach before. So again, he's going to have to get up to speed quickly with his coaching chops. But he's eager. He's confident. We know he's confident, right?
Yeah.
He believes in himself. And it's going to be a real fun, interesting ride to see how this unfolds with the staff, with the roster. And like Mike said, man, that schedule. Fresno State. Have you guys checked out Fresno State this year? Syracuse, Virginia Tech, and then you got Wisconsin, Iowa, Ohio State, Michigan. There's a lot of heavy lifting next year, too. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, that first 7 games is pretty nasty. All right, we're going to go to the Christmas portion of this. The holiday tomorrow, the big day for a lot of folks that give gifts back and forth, and you've got 1 minute or less because we're running up against it. We're not running out of time. You never run out of time on Zoom in theory, but I told you I'd get you out of here at a reasonable time. I'm going to start with you, Mike, on the gift that Purdue needs most. You're doing a lot of basketball now. Is that a trip to the Final Four? What if you were Purdue or if you were Mike Babinski wishing for a gift for your athletic program, what would it be?
Well, I need Caleb first to say the word Babinski for me because he said, obviously the gift would be getting to the Final Four and winning a national championship. But how do you go about getting there? I think, although Purdue played well enough the other night, they still need Saturday if they're going to achieve that. And so you need a healthy and productive Saturday. And the other thing that I would put in their stocking is more consistent 3-point shooting.
Yeah,
it's been a struggle. It's been a struggle here recently. They have good shooters, but they just need to find a consistent level night in and night out.
All right. That's good. That was the most succinct answer we've ever had on our Zooms. So, you're the winner. All right, Brian, up to you. Yours are always.
Yeah, we're not doing the Final Four thing yet. We're not. We're not talking about Final Fours yet.
All right, there you go.
This team's got a long way to go.
No
way to go. I think obviously, football drives the ship, and you need this. you need this hire to work out. I think when you go out and look for coaches, a lot of people want you to hire a star, but I think sometimes too, you find a comet. And I think, Purdue seems to believe that they found a comet, Ryan Walters, a guy who's on his way up. If he's able to energize this program, sort of the way Jeff Brom did those first couple of years. And if they're able to just be a little bit more disciplined, run a little bit of a tighter ship, keep in mind how many wins Purdue left on the field the last couple of years. Just if you just tighten this up, tighten that up, if things were maybe just a little bit, more cleaner, more streamlined behind the scenes, maybe if people were all on the same page, just a little bit more, think about how different things could be and think about how good things were. All the memories that were created that will live on forever in Purdue football history here. Just think about if you win at Syracuse, if you close out Wisconsin a couple of years ago, if you win it at Nevada, if you win this game, that game, Eastern Michigan, all those games that, you should have won that you didn't, we're not talking about a coach here who, was 2 games over 500, whatever the final record was. And in context, that being a pretty big success, we're talking about, somebody here who won like 60% of his games and, maybe should have that. I don't want to say have that statue, but, was really, really something special here. And I think, Ryan Walters can sort of take this. If Ryan Walters is what Purdue seems to believe he is, and Mike Babinski does have a pretty good track record identifying that kind of it factor with up and comers. If they've got that, with the schedule being what it is, with the divisional realignment coming being what it is, you might be onto something here. But we obviously have no way of knowing how this is going to pan out. It's been a week. He's not coached a game. He's not coached a practice. I'm not sure he has an office yet. I'd be interested to know who has the head coach's office right now. Is it Brian Brom or is it Ryan Walters? Anyway, I think Purdue needs this football hire more than anything to work out. So that to me is Purdue's foremost holiday wish.
All right. Tom Dienhart, you get the last word.
Jeff Brom gets to drive victoriously down I-65 in his 2004 Honda Accord, right?
Yeah.
I think a job well done. And I think Purdue, speaking of Syracuse, too, I'd still be stuck at Syracuse if it wasn't for Mike Carmin. My car was locked in the garage and he bailed me out. Anyway, I digress. I'm going to say a quarterback. How about that? They need a gunslinging quarterback. No offense to Michael Lamo or Brady Allen. Maybe they're ready to go. But I guess if I'm the head coach in 2023, I'd feel a lot better if I had a quarterback on my roster who'd been through the battles, so to speak, of big-time college football. And you're going to need it. Again, we talked about that schedule. So big-time quarterback who's going to make everybody around him better. Maybe they'll get one before Christmas. Who knows? But that would be my wish, specifically for Purdue football, I think, for this holiday season of 2022.
All right, well said. I think all those are well. Any one of those would fit well in Purdue's stocking. Guys, thanks so much. I want to thank the Union Club Hotel, but I really want to thank all of you. I've had the privilege of working with you guys this year. It's always Christmas is a good time for reflection, and I'm grateful for all of you, all the support that you've given me, and we appreciate also our readers, listeners, viewers. The outpouring support for Brian has been terrific and inspirational as well. We've appreciated that too. So thank you all. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, or whatever you're celebrating in the next week. We'll have one of these next week as well, leading into that. Mr. Dienhart will be jumping on the plane here around this time next week, but we'll look forward to doing that as well. So happy holidays to all, and we'll see you next week on our Saturday Simulcast.